Thanks for tuning in. Today, we are reading the Apology by Plato. The Apology presents the speech of Socrates as he defends himself during his trial in 399 BCE in Athens. Accused of corrupting the youth and not believing in the city's gods, Socrates offers a bold and unyielding defense of his philosophy and way of life. Rather than attempting to win the jury's favor with emotional appeals, Socrates speaks candidly about the pursuit of truth. The Apology of Socrates by Plato. What impression, O Athenian men, the words of my accusers have made on you, I do not know. What is certain is that I myself, because of these words, almost forgot myself, believing for a moment that I am not who I am. In such a convincing way they spoke, and yet I can assure you that almost no truth has been told. And of those many lies which they invented, I admired above all where they said, that you must beware lest you be deceived by me, because, according to their words, I am a great orator. Because not to fear it shamed her, because at once they would be proved by me to be really lying, when in the least I did not appear to be a great orator, this courage of theirs seemed to me to be most shameless. Unless perhaps a great orator and eloquent they call him who speaks the truth, because if that is what they mean, I would confess that I am certainly a great orator, but not in the way they mean and pass on the rhetoric. For yet, I repeat, I have said almost no truth, but you will hear the truth clearly from me. But Zeus, O Athenian men, you will not hear from me words embellished, of course, as they are the words of my accusers, with elegant phrases and fine words, nor adorned with rhetorical shapes and periods of art. But you will hear words from the offhand, with simplicity and with the words that may come to my mind. For I am confident that what I am going to say is just, and let none of you expect anything else from me. For it would certainly not be appropriate, as I believe at my present age, to appear before the court giving speeches as a non-partisan. And therefore, this is my only request, which I make to you, O Athenian men, and this is all I ask of you. If you will hear me, that in my apology I treat the same words and the same way in which I usually speak in public, and in spite of the market bankers, in which most of you have heard me, and in every other part of the city. In the palæstra and in the workshops, do not be surprised, do not mock me for it, making noise. Because this is the case, I am now appearing in court for the first time, when I am more than 70 years old. To me, therefore, the manner in which they speak here is not alien and unusual. Since, therefore, if I happen to be a real stranger, you would certainly forgive me, as I think, if they speak in that dialect and manner in which I was brought up in my place. So now on this occasion I beseech you. And I believe that my request is just in the manner of my speech, not to be careful, bad or good, and this only observe, and to this draw all your attention, whether I say justly or not. For this is the virtue of the judge, and the virtue of the orator is to speak only the truth. First, then, it is just to apologize, O men of Athens, to the first accusations against me as false, and to my first accusers, and then to the last, and to the last accusers. For there have been many accusers before you against me, who have accused me many years ago, and have told no truth. And these I fear more than Anyton and his companions, though the latter are very terrible, but those others are far more terrible, O men. For most of you have received you, as by training from your childhood, as the educators, and tried to persuade you by their false accusations against me to have a wrong opinion about me, saying that there is a certain Socrates there, a wise man, who deals with meteors, examining the air, the thunder and the lightning, and he has searched into all that is in the bosom of the earth, and by his words he can do justice to an unjust cause. These, O men of Athens, because they spread this rumour, are my most terrible and dangerous accusers. For those who have listened to them think that those people who are engaged in these matters are not only harmful, but also gods do not believe. Moreover, these accusers have been numerous and have been working for a long time to spread these accusations, and to this end they speak to you, even at such an age at which you could easily believe them, because most of you were children at that time, and some of you were children, when they accused me completely in absentia, without the accused being able to apologize. That which is not the most unjust thing of all is this, that even their names cannot be known and said, unless it happens that one is a comedian, of course. And those who envy me or slander you, and those who, because they themselves were convinced, try to persuade others, all of them remain unknown, and are therefore always unassailable. For I cannot now bring any of them before you, nor reprove any of them and prove them liars. But it is necessary, in order to defend myself, not at all to shadow, as they say, and in my defence to refute, without any adversary being seen. So admit that, as I have said, my accusers have been of two kinds. Some are those who have just accused me, and others who, many years ago, about whom I spoke last. And please consider that I need to apologize first to those first. On the contrary, you have heard them accuse me before, and they have made a much greater impression on you than the latter here. Well then, I must apologize in my defence, O Athenian men, and attempt in such a short time, as far as I am permitted by law, to speak, to cast out from your mind the bad reputation which you have formed for me by the calumnies against me for so long that it has now taken deep root. I would, of course, wish with all my heart to accomplish that which is good both for you and for me, and even more than that I would have wished to succeed by my apology, so that not only will you cast off the bad idea about me, but also that you may form a good opinion of me. But I think this is difficult, and I do not lose much of the importance of this. But let this be as pleasing to God, but we must obey the law and apologize. Let us therefore attempt again at the outset to say, what is the accusation from which came the slander against me, on which, as is well known, the Meletos took the liberty of making the present accusation against me? Well, let us see with what slander those first devils of mine slandered me.
It is, of course, necessary to surround their slander with a form of an official accusation made before the court, and to read it here as if it were
a document, as it is customary to read out in court the affidavit of the accused. Socrates is impious because, with criminal curiosity, he engages in useless things, seeking to discover the mysteries and the heavenly mysteries under the earth. For unjust pretends to be righteous, and because it becomes the cause of evil, because it imparts this same teaching to others. That is roughly the accusation against me, for you saw these things yourself in Aristophanes' comedy. You saw there on stage a certain Socrates wandering in limbo and saying that he was walking in the air, and many other, chattering to babbling, of which I mean nothing, neither much nor little. And I say this not because I despise such science, if anyone is wise about knowledge of this kind, in order not to be denounced by Meletus as guilty of so many crimes, but precisely because, O Athenian men, I do not know this science. Witness to this I recommend most of you yourself, and I demand that you, those of you who have ever heard me speak, and many of you, my listeners and interlocutors, are here in court, testify and reveal to each other. Consider then among yourselves, if any of you have ever heard me speak of this kind of knowledge, either briefly and superficially, or profoundly and substantially. And from this falsehood you will know that the other things that are said about me are false. Fourth, but of course none of these are true either. And even if you have ever heard anyone say that I pass on the teacher, and that I receive money for it, and that is not true. For if it were, I myself would confess it, for it seems to me that this is a beautiful thing, to be able to train men, as gorgeous Leontinus and Prodicus of Caius and Hippias of Elias do. For each of them, in whatever city he may affiliate, succeeds in persuading young people, those who could be taught freely by any other fellow citizen whom they like, to leave him and come to be taught by them with payment, and therefore even to be indebted with gratitude to them. Besides, there is another wise man here, Parius, who, as I learned from Callion, dwells in Athens as a stranger. For it so happened that one day I visited a man who had paid to the sophists more money than all our fellow citizens, Callion, the son of Hipponicus. So I asked him repeatedly, when there was talk of his sons, for he has 2 sons, O Callias, said I, if you had, instead of 2 sons, 2 poles or 2 calves, we would seek to receive in our service for them a caretaker with a salary, a man capable, of course, who can make them perfect in all things, so that each one may be skillful in his proper work. And it would be this caretaker, or one of the horsemen, of course, for the pole, or one of the agricultural men for the calf. And now, since your sons are men, what kind of caretaker do you think of hiring for them? What teacher has this scientific ability, that is, to man in general and to the citizen in particular? Because, I think you have thought about this, since you have children. So do you know anybody, said I, or not? Yes, replied Callias. Who is he, I asked, and where is he from, and how much does he receive in return for his teaching? This is Evenos, Socrates, said he, Parius, and he receives a salary from each of his disciples of 5 pence. I then blessed Evenos, if it is true that he knows this great art and teaches it so harmoniously. I at least would certainly consider this my honour, and I would be glorious and proud if I knew what Evenos teaches. But unfortunately I do not know them, O Athenian men. But he could interrupt me and ask me, perhaps each of you. But, O Socrates, if you truly do not have this knowledge, what incomprehensible thing is this peculiarity of yours? Where did these calumnies come from, which are spread against you? For, of course, through you, where you did nothing stranger than other people do, so much fame would not be broken, and there would never be so much talk if you did not do something different from others. So tell us what it is that you have done, so that we may not make an unjust decision, inventing with our imagination non-existent things for you. It seems to me that whoever makes this objection is right. I will therefore try to prove what it is at last that has made my name so glorious, and at the same time has given rise to the slanders against me. So you listened, and it may seem to some of you that I am not serious, but that I am playing. But know well, I will tell you the whole truth. I, O Athenian men, by no other thing have I acquired this name, but by some wisdom, of course. What exactly do I say this wisdom is? This is human wisdom, of course, for now I meditate that in this wisdom I am wise, while these other wise men of whom I have just spoken may be wise as to another kind of wisdom, far superior to human wisdom. Or I do not know what to tell you of this wisdom of theirs. For I at least do not know this wisdom, of course, but whoever says that I know it, he both lies and says these things in order to slander me. But I beseech you, O Athenian men, not to be alarmed, and even if I appear to speak to you a very great word for my boast. For the reason which I am going to tell you is not mine, but belongs to a very reliable personality. For witness of my own wisdom I will bring you the god of Delphi himself, who will tell you what wisdom I have and of what kind. You know, of course, as I think, Chaerephon. As he has been a friend of mine since his youth, he has also been a follower of your democracy and has been condemned with you in the recent exile of the 30, and has returned again to the city with you. And you know very well what kind of man this Chaerephon was, and how impetuous and fervent he was in whatever he wanted. So one day on his way to Delphi, he dared to ask this question to the oracle. Again, I beg you, O men, not to be alarmed by what I am going to tell you. So he asked the oracle if there was any other man in the world wiser than I was. And Pythia replied that there is no one else wiser than me. And his brother, who is present here, will confirm this to you, since he has now died. And meditate on what reason I am telling you all this. I say this because I intend to prove to you where the evil against me originated. I, having heard this answer of the oracle, pondered for myself as follows. What does Apollo say at last, and what meaning do those words implicit? For I now know well that in me there is no wisdom, neither great nor small. What then does the god supposedly mean when he declares that I am the wisest of all men? For surely God never lies, for that is not proper to him. And for a long time I wondered what the oracle's oracle meant, until, after much trouble, I thought of doing this kind of research to explain it. I went to one of our fellow citizens, who has a reputation for being wise, thinking that here better than any other place I could check the oracle by deceit, and prove to the oracle that this man here is wiser than I am. While you, O oracle, said that I am wiser. So thinking well of him, whose name I need not say, but he was one of our greatest statesmen, concerning whom it occurred to me in examining what I did not expect. And in conversation with him, I saw that this man is believed by many others to be wise, and even by himself, but he really is not wise. Having understood this, I tried to prove to him that he believed himself to be wise, but he was not. Because of this, I became hated by him and by many of his friends who were present during our conversation. What is certain, however, is that while I was parting from him, I began to think for myself that of course of this man I am wiser, but apparently neither of us knows anyone who is a perfectly good thing. But there is this difference between us. He imagines that he knows what, while he knows nothing, but as I know nothing, so I believe that I do not know. It therefore seems to me, of course, that I am a little wiser than he is in this respect, that what I do not know, and I believe that I do not know. Then I went to another fellow citizen of ours from those who have a reputation for being wiser than the first one, and it seemed to me that I heard the same things from him invariably. Since then, I have been hated by him and many of our fellow citizens. After this, therefore, in turn I began to go to other fellow citizens, although I was well aware that I was hated by them. And I was sorry for this and feared the consequences of hatred, but they felt that it was necessary, no doubt, to prefer to all others the scholarship of Apollo. It seemed good to me then that I should submit to all those who had the greatest reputation for knowing something, because I wanted to discover the true meaning of the oracle. And with him, O Athenian men, for I must tell you the whole truth, I have suffered something like this. Those of them who had the good reputation of being wise, to me who sought to understand the oracle of God, seemed almost ignorant, and others who were considered by others to be very little intelligent, seemed to me to be even very wise people. And I must, of course, relate all my wanderings, which I have done, as the sufferings of a man who undergoes various labours, so that to me, at any rate, the oracle seems no longer amenable to control. For after the politicians I turned to the poets, both the tragedians and the dithyramists and the other poets, thinking that here I will now speak with very clear evidence that I am more ignorant than them. So I mentioned those poems of theirs, where it seemed to me that they were more successful in discussing repeatedly what they wanted to mean and what was the purpose and economy of their works, so that at the same time I might learn something from them. But I am truly ashamed to tell you, O men, the truth. But I have to say this, that is to say, to speak briefly, almost all those who were then present at our conversation, if one asked them, could answer much better than these same poets about the poems which they themselves had composed. So I knew this for the poets at once, that whatever poems they write not out of their wisdom, but out of some natural inclination, and out of enthusiasm and inspiration. They resembled invariably the enthusiasm by which theomanciers and oracles are overwhelmed, for even so, they say many fine things, but they mean none of what they say. This kind of passion seemed to me to happen to poets as well, and at the same time I understood that because of their poetry they thought that in other things they were wise people, in which they were not. So I left them too, thinking that I was superior to them by the same advantage in which I appeared superior to politicians. So last I went and met the craftsmen, for I was conscious that I knew almost nothing of their art, and I was convinced that I would certainly find them very capable of many beautiful things. And in this respect I did not know, but they knew what I lead, and in this respect they were wiser than I was. But, O Athenian men, it seemed to me that the great craftsman had exactly the same defect as the poets. Each of them, because he performs his art well, had the requirement that even the most important things, namely politics and the administration of the city, be wise. And this only their fault, their delusion and their foolishness, so obscured that great wisdom of theirs that it annihilated it. Wherefore I asked myself repeatedly, as if speaking in the name of the oracle always, which of the two shall I prefer, to be such as I am, and without being wise at all, to have the wisdom of them, and without being ignorant, to have the ignorance of them, or both, that is, to have the wisdom and ignorance which they have, and to be me as they are. So I answered myself and the oracle, that for me it is better to be as I am. Because of the present examination, O men of Athens, many hatreds have been born against me, and dislikes are so strong and dangerous that many calumnies may arise from them, and I am called by this name, that I am wise. For all who are present during my various speeches believe that I am wise as to those things as to which I have revealed the ignorance of others. And yet, on the contrary, O men of Athens, it seems to me that only the God is wise, and this is what Apollo just wanted to say in this oracle, that human wisdom is of very little value, or, to put it better, none. And apparently this is what the oracle about Socrates means, and he used my own name as an example for this purpose, as he would do if he wished to say that he, O men, is wiser than you, who recognizes, as Socrates does, that, as to wisdom, he truly has no value. Therefore I, even Torah, going around the city, seek and examine according to the will of God, whether I may find any truly wise from both the bourgeois and the foreigners. And when it does not seem to me that anyone really is wise, then I contribute to the correct explanation of the oracle. I make it appear that he is not wise. And because of this occupation I have no time left either in politics to do anything worthwhile, nor in my private affairs to take care of it. But I am in the greatest poverty because of the respect I bestow on the god of Delphi. To this end many young people, even those who have no occupation, children of our wealthy fellow citizens who follow me voluntarily without any incitement, take great pleasure in listening to me in what way I prove people's fallacies, and then they again, often imitating me, attempt to examine others whom I wanted. And do not doubt that, I meditate, there are a great multitude of people who imagine that they know something but know very little, or rather none. And because of this, those who are controlled by them as ignorant are angry against me and not against themselves, as they should be for their ignorance, and say that there is a certain Socrates, a man of the most debauchery, who corrupts the youth. And when anyone wanted to ask them what it is, where this man does, and what it teaches and corrupts young people, they cannot give any answer, but they are in ignorance, and so that they do not appear to be agitated. As having no certain facts against me, they spread what they say casually against all philosophers in general. That is, that he teaches about what happens in heaven and in the depths of the earth, and that men should not believe in the gods, and that by his words he makes an unjust cause just. Because the truth, as I believe, they would not dare to tell, because they become manifest that they pretend to know something but know nothing. Since therefore they are indeed contentious to me, and impetuous, and many in number, and especially speak well organized and with a very convincing eloquence, they filled your ears with these calumnies, which they have been saying against me for a long time and with great vehemence. And out of these devils I took the occasion, and Meletus attacked me, and Anytus and Lycon, Meletus, because he was enraged against me for the sake of the poets, and Anytus for the sake of the craftsmen and politicians, and Lycon for the sake of the orators. So that in this regard, on the contrary, which I said at the beginning marvellous and paradoxical, I would consider it miraculous and paradoxical, if I were to succeed in so short a time in eliminating from your spirit this calumny, when it has been done in so long and so much rooted. These are, O men of Athens, what I have said before, that with all truth I will expose and tell you, and I have told you this, without concealing anything from you, neither great nor small, and without fear of silencing anyone, though I know almost that, because of it, above all my boldness, I am hated. But this is also a clear proof that I am telling the truth, and that this is how the evil against me came about, and these are the causes of it. And whether you want to examine these things, you will find that this is the case. Concerning those accusations which my first accusers have made against me, let these be my apology to you, and then I will try to apologize to Meliton the good and loving, as he says, and to the others, my last accusers. Again, therefore, since these accusers are others, let us repeat their last written accusation, as we have read the first. He says that Socrates is guilty because he corrupts young people too, and because he does not believe in the gods, whom the city believes, and because instead he presents other new demons. That is my crime. Let us examine each of them separately. There's an accusation that I am guilty of injustice because I corrupt the youth. But I say on the contrary, O men of Athens, that Meletus is justly guilty, because in such a serious matter he is accusing before your court with great indifference of a citizen, so that it seems that he cares with importance for things for which he has not hitherto taken care at all. And that this is so, I will try to prove it to you. So please, come here to you, fellow, he said. Do you care so much about nothing else but how to make young people as righteous as possible? Meletus, not at all, of course. Socrates. Come then, said to the judges, who is that man who makes the new ones more righteous? It is obvious that you know him, since he certainly cares about these matters. For since you have discovered me, as you say, that I corrupt the youth, you denounce me to them here and charge me for this act. But come, he also said to him, who makes the new ones more righteous, and reveal here to the judges who he is. Speak, do you see, O fellow, that you are silent, and you cannot call him this? And yet does it not seem to you that this is shameful and sufficient proof to that which I am saying? That you are by no means concerned with the education of young people? But say, dear fellow, who makes them better? Meletos, the laws, Socrates. But I am not asking you about this, good luck, but what man who in the first place knows exactly what you said, the laws? Meletos. These are the judges here, O Socrates.
Socrates. What do you say, O fellow? Are these judges here capable of educating young people and making them more righteous?
Meletos. Yes, Socrates. Which of the two? All the judges are capable of doing so, or some of them only, but some not. Meletos. All judges, Socrates. What thou shalt say is marvellous, Toanti, but Heron, and thou hast thus discovered a great abundance of men who can benefit young people. But so what? Can these listeners, wherever they listen to us, also make young people better or not? Meletos. They too can, Socrates. But can parliamentarians too? Meletos. Members of parliament do likewise, Meletos. But, O fellow, do those who meet in the church of the people, the Ecclesiastes, corrupt the young? Or are they all equally capable of making them better? Meletos. They are likewise capable of this, Socrates. It seems then that all Athenians can make young people good and good except me, and I alone corrupt them. Is that what you mean? Meletos. Yes, that's exactly what I mean. Socrates. You judge me, of course, as one of the unhappiest people. But please, I answered, it seems to you, of course, that the same is true when we speak of horses. Those who make them more useful are the whole world, but one alone corrupts them? Or not at all, on the contrary, there is only one who is able to make them more useful, or very few, those who are called horsemen, and the rest of the people. If they are always descended with horses and treat them to their use, corrupt them. Is it not so, O fellow, both for horses and for all other animals? Certainly for me, either you and Anytus deny this, or you admit it. For great happiness and extraordinary advantage would be for young people, if, in truth, one alone is capable of corrupting them, as you say, while the rest could benefit them and make them more righteous. But it is not so, O fellow, for you have made enough demonstration by saying that hitherto you have never taken care of the education of young people, and you unscrupulously confess your negligence, that you have not taken care at all of these matters for which you are bringing me to trial. And I also answered, please, O for the love of Zeus, Meletus, who is better, to dwell with citizens who are virtuous or with wicked and corrupt? I answered, my friend, because I am certainly not asking you anything difficult. Is it not true that evil men cause some harm to those who constantly associate with them, while the virtuous cause some good to those who always live with them? Meletos. Yes. Socrates. Is there any man, then, who prefers to be harmed rather by those with whom he usually lives than to benefit? Please, answer me, dear. For the law merely commands that the opposing parties answer each other. Is there anyone who prefers to be harmed rather than benefited? Meletos, of course not. There is none, Socrates. Come then, tell me, Torah. You denounced me here because you believe that I corrupt young people and make them worse. But which of the two do I corrupt them intentionally or unintentionally? Meletos. Quite deliberately, certainly, Socrates. But how, O fellow? You, who are so young, are so much wiser than me, where I am of such old age, that you know that evil men certainly cause evil to those who live with them, and the virtuous cause good to them. And I have become so ignorant of the truth, that even this I am still unaware of, that if I do evil to any of those who associate with me, I shall then risk suffering any evil from him, so that this great evil I voluntarily inflict upon myself, as you claim? Of these things I am not convinced of thee, O fellow, and I think no other man shall be convinced. But either I do not corrupt the young, or if I corrupt them I do this unwillingly, so that in both cases you lie and slander. But if I unwittingly corrupt young people, for such crimes, as is well known, there is no law in public to charge me, but after those who have the right to do so have set me aside, to pretend to me my error and counsel me. For it is evident that, if by their counsel I am well led, I will cease to do what I certainly unwillingly do. But thou hast refrained, and did not wish to approach me and present me with this error, but publicly denounce me here in court, where the law decrees that those who need punishment and punishment, but not instruction and exhortation, be tried. 14th. But what I, O Athenian men, said is now evident, that Meletus never took care of these matters, neither much nor little. But answer us, Torah, O Mele, in what way do you mean that I corrupt the young? But why do I sit and ask you, since it is very evident, of course, that according to the indictment which you signed against me, you say that I corrupt these new teachers not to believe the gods whom the city believes, but others of new deity? Don't you say that by this teaching I corrupt young people? Meletos, that is certainly what I am saying. Socrates, so in the name of these same gods, whom we now mention, I exorcise you. He said a little clearer still, both for me and for these judges here, because I cannot understand it correctly. You say that I teach people to believe that there are some gods. Therefore, I myself believe that there are gods, and I am not at all an atheist, but I am not accused of being guilty in this respect. But you say that I do not believe those gods whom the city believes, but others different. And this is therefore my crime, for which you have denounced me in court, that I believe other gods, or do you say that I myself do not believe in gods at all, and I teach other people these things? Meletos, that is what I am saying. I accuse you of not believing in any god. Socrates. Well, dear fellow, for what purpose are you saying this? So I don't believe that neither the sun nor the moon are gods, as all people believe this? Meletos. No, but Zeus, he certainly does not believe this, O male judges, since he says that the sun is a stone and the moon is earth. Socrates. But do you think that you accuse Anaxagoras, good Mele? And so much do you despise these judges here? And do you think that they are so inexperienced in literature that they are unaware that the books of Anaxagoras of Clazomenius are full of these beliefs? In fact, even young people learn it from me. It is not surprising for Meletus to say this, but it is sometimes possible for young people to buy them at most for 1 drachma. From the theatre orchestra, and mock Socrates if he pretends that these are his own theories, especially since they themselves are so inappropriate and paradoxical. But by the love of Zeus, in this way do I seem to you that I do not believe that there is any god, and do you insist on it? Meletos. Yes, certainly, but Zeus, you don't believe in any god, not at all. Socrates. Unbelievable things, do you say, O fellow? And above all, unbelievable things for yourself, of course, as it seems to me. For to me, O Athenian men, this Meletus here seems to be very abusive and despicable with work and with word, and not at all out of great hubris and contempt and presumptuous youth, he brought this accusation against me. For he is like a man who composed an enigma, wanting to test me. So will Socrates, the wise man, understand that I am happy and contradict myself, saying contrary things, or will I deceive him and others wherever they listen to me? For he seems to me to contradict himself in his indictment by saying what he himself is against, because if he wanted to, he said, Socrates is guilty because he does not believe in gods, but because he believes in gods. But the truth is that of a man who wants to play. 15th, so examine with me, please, O men, the manner in which he seems to speak against himself. And you, O fellow, answer us. And you, O men, for whom I even at the beginning of my speech pleaded with you, remember not to be angry against me, if I speak in my usual dialectical way. Answer, O fellow. Is there a person who believes that there are human things but does not believe that there are people? You have commanded, O men, that he should answer my questions and not make so much noise. Is there anyone who does not believe that horses exist, but believes that there are regulations for the exercise of horses? Or a piper does not believe, but a court melody believes? There is none, O your excellency fellow. Since you do not want to answer, I answer for you and these others here, judge and hearer. But at least he answered that afterwards. Is there any man who believes that there are divine things, but gods does not believe that there are? Meletos. Of course not. Socrates. How pleased you have been to me, because you have just replied after the judges have forced you to do so. Now you confess that I have demonic things, and I believe that there are, and I teach this whether new or old, but demonic things I believe most certainly in your confession. And this you even affirmed under oath in the interrogation. If I do not believe that there are demonic things, I certainly need to believe that there are demons. Isn't that so? That is certainly the case. For I take you to confess this, since you do not answer. But don't we believe these demons to be either gods, of course, or children of gods? Do you agree with this or not? Meletos. In fact, I agree. Socrates. Well, if I believe in demons, as you confess, if demons are some gods of the city or others, then to say that I believe that there are no gods, and again that I believe that there are demons, since of course I believe that there are demons, reveals what I was saying, namely, that you propose an enigma and you are joking. And if, on the other hand, demons are children of gods, some illegitimate children, if you prefer, or of nymphs, or of other mortals born, of whom, as is well known, are said to have been born, what man would believe that gods do not exist, but gods do not exist? For it is also absurd, since if one believed invariably that children born of horses and beings exist, the mules, but horses alone do not exist. But, O fellows, thou hast brought this charge against me, because thou wilt test me with them, or because thou hast had no true crime for which to prosecute me in court. By no means will you ever be able to convince any man who has a little wisdom that the same man should believe that there are demons and divine things, and that he should believe neither in demons, nor in gods, nor in heroes. But, O men of Athens, that although I am not guilty according to the indictment of Meletus, this seems to me to have no need of a longer apology, but there are also enough of these things which I have said. And what I spoke of before, that for a long time, and on the part of many people, hatred was born against me, you know very well that it is true. And this is where I will be defeated and condemned, if of course not Meletus, not Anytus, but the evil. Reverence of the multitude and envy for me, which, as is well known, have caused the loss of many more virtuous men, and I think that others in the future will disappear. And there is no danger that this evil of slander and hatred should not increase further, but would never cease with me and reassure. But perhaps one wished, are you not ashamed then, O Socrates, because you have taken on this profession from which you are now in danger of dying? But I wanted to refute him with a very just answer, that you do not speak correctly, O man, if you think that a man who has even the slightest value should consider life or death risk, and not reflect on all his actions alone, whether what he does is just or unjust, and whether these are the works of a righteous man or evil. Otherwise, in the sense of your word at least, those of the demigods who died in Troyan and the other heroes, and especially her son Thetis, who, in order to avoid disgrace, so despised the danger of his life that, when his mother, who was a goddess, saw that he was very anxious to kill Hector, so he spoke unto him, for I at least remember, O my son, if thou shalt take revenge for the murder of thy friend Patroclus and slay Hector, thou yourself shalt then die, for at once he saith unto him, after Hector thy death is ready. After hearing this he despised death and danger, and because he was much more afraid of living as a coward and not being able to take revenge on behalf of his friends, may I die, he cried out. After punishing him who tried me by slaying Patroclus, that I might not remain here in Troy laughing, sitting near my curved ships, useless weight of the earth. Do you think he paid any attention to death and the danger of his life? No, for so it truly is, O Athenian men. In whatever position one ranks himself, or by choice because he is convinced that this position is very honourable to him, or because he was ordered by any of his generals to take that position, there he is obliged, in my judgment, to stand firm and risk his life without counting anyone, neither death nor anything even more terrible than in the face of dishonesty. Paradoxically, of course, O Athenian men, it would happen if, when the generals whom you have chosen to be my leaders sent me to Potidaean and Amphipolis and Delian, then I remained where they ordered me, as well as everyone else, and risked my death. And now when God has commanded me, as I judged and meditated, that I should live by engaging in philosophy and examining myself and other people, here for fear of death or no other evil, I wanted to abandon this position. Of course, this was terrible, and verily then it was right to denounce me in court, because I do not believe that there are gods, because I disobey the oracle and fear death, and I think I am wise when I am not. For to fear death, of course, O men, is nothing but to believe that one is wise when it is not, because that means knowing those things which one does not know. For no one knows whether death does not happen to be for man the greatest of all good, and they fear it, as if they knew with certainty that it is the greatest of evils. And yet, to fear death, how is it not so shameful ignorance, which is therefore discernible, to believe that one knows what one does not know? And I, O men, in this respect may differ from all other men, and if, as Apollo said, he would say that I am wiser than others in anything, therefore he would say that I am wiser. That, as I do not know as much as is enough about Hades and the state of souls in him, so I think I don't know. And to do injustice, or to disobey him who is his best and superior, whether God or man, is very harmful and very shameful, I know that. So I will never be afraid, nor will I want to evade the evils, which I do not know to be bad, and which may happen to be good at all, but I will rather fear and evade the bad, which I know is indeed bad. So that, even if you now acquit me, without giving credence to the accusation of Anytus, who said either that I should not at all be denounced in court, or, after I had been denounced, that it is not possible not to condemn me to death, because he said unto you that if I am acquitted, all your children now, if they wish to apply what Socrates teaches, they would not be corrupted at all, so if you would acquit me, Torah, and those who were innocent would say to me, looking to them, O Socrates, but we will not give credence to what Anytus said against you, but we declare you innocent, but on condition that you no longer concern yourself with these matters, nor engage in philosophy. But if you wanted to commit the same offence again, and you wanted to be discovered, you will be condemned to death. If, therefore, as I have said, under these conditions you would dismiss me, I would tell you that I, O men of Athens, esteem and love you, but I will be more convinced of the God of Delphi than of you. And as long as I live and have powers, I will not cease to engage in philosophy, and to advise you always and point out to any of you those where I am always accustomed, that, O good man, how? Since you are an Athenian and a citizen of the greatest city and most solemn, both for its wisdom and for its power, for riches you are not ashamed to care how to gather as much as possible, and how to obtain glory and honour. But you neglect the treasures of wisdom and truth, and do not work for your soul how to become as righteous as possible? And if anyone denies this, and has said that he cares for his soul, I will not leave him at once content with this confession, nor will I turn away from his neighbour, but I will ask him various questions, and examine him accurately, and reprove him, and if it appears to me that he truly has no virtue and ability, but he imagines that he has, I will reproach him then, and tell him that he pays very little attention to the most important things, and the most trivial and unworthy things he greatly appreciates. In this way I will speak both to young people and to an old man with whom I wanted to have a conversation, both to a stranger and to my fellow citizens, but even more so to my fellow citizens, since you are more familiar to me as to origin. For, know this well, these things God commands me to do, and I meditate that until now no greater good has been enjoyed by your city, despite my own unceasing service to God. For I go around your city, devoting myself to nothing but trying to persuade you, young and old, that neither for your body should you care, nor for riches and all other things before your soul, nor so much as for your soul. How to make it as excellent as possible, for I will not cease to tell you that virtue is not made by money, but, on the contrary, by virtue, money, and so on, all that is good and beneficial to men, both privately and commonly. If, therefore, by these speeches I corrupt young people, they would be harmful and poisonous. But if anyone claims that I say one thing and not that, he is deceiving you by lying. Therefore I would say, O men of Athens, either be convinced of Anyton or not, and either acquit me or do not acquit me, and be convinced that I wanted to do nothing but these things, and if it is still necessary many times for me to die. Do not be alarmed, O men of Athens, but persist for my sake in those things which I have beseeched you, not to be alarmed by what I may say, but only to hear, for as I think you will even benefit if you listen to me. Because, of course, I am going to tell you a few other things, about which you may cry out with a lot of noise, but do not do this at all. Know it well, if you condemn me to death, while I am such as I say I am, you will do no more harm to me than to yourself. For neither Meletus nor Anytus wanted me harmed at all, because even they wouldn't have the power to hurt me. For I think it is not according to divine laws for the most virtuous man to be harmed by the most evil. But to condemn me to death or exile perhaps he could, or dishonour me by confiscating my possessions and depriving me of my civil rights. But even those around him think that these things are evil, but I do not think so. But even more so, I believe that it is a great evil to do what one is doing today, namely to seek to condemn a man unjustly. Torah then, O men of Athens, I am far from apologizing out of love for myself, as one might think, but I apologize out of love for you, for if you condemn me, I fear luck and offend this gift of Apollo, which was bestowed upon you, who commanded me to prevent you from fallacies and defects, and to advise you in the study of virtue. For if you condemn me to death, you will not easily find another man of this kind, as it is I, whom God has closely attached to your city, though the analogy is a little ridiculous. Unchanged as to no horse noble and brave, but who, because of his greatness, is very dull and sluggish, and needs no sting to revolt and intelligently. There is no doubt, it seems to me, that God has invited me to your city in such an attribute that I will not cease at all throughout the day everywhere to sit near you and never leave you alone, trying to rouse you from hibernation and to persuade and rebuke each one individually. So you will not easily find another man, O men, no matter how hard you toil, but if you want to be convinced of me, take pity on my life. And you perhaps angry, as are the men who are still sleepy. When you wake them up you wanted to beat me convincingly to Anyton, and so unnecessarily you wanted to kill me. And then for the rest of your life you would still be in a deep sleep, if God would not have mercy on you, providing for you, and would not send after me any other like me. That I happen to be such that I have been given to your city by God, from the following you may well understand. That is to say, it does not seem to be a human thing for me to have neglected all my own affairs and to tolerate my household affairs being left unprotected for so many years, but to be devoted to you and always to work in your own interest, receiving each of you in particular as if I were your father or as your older brother, and try to persuade you to care for virtue. And if, of course, from this work I had any benefit and gave you this advice for a salary, then I would have some occasion for doing so. But now you see for yourself that my accusers, though so shamelessly attributed all the other slanders against me, at least in this respect they could not appear shameless and prove by witnesses that I either ever received a salary from anyone or demanded it. But I, in confirmation of the truth of my words, present to you what I believe is an indisputable witness, my poverty. So perhaps it seemed absurd that I really give these counsels in private, going around your city and interfering curiously in foreign affairs, but publicly I dare not, appearing before the church of your municipality, from the podium to give counsel to the city. And the cause of this timidity of mine is that which you yourselves with your ears have often heard me say in many places, that a divine thing and demon is happening to me, which, as is well known, and in the indictment a Miletus derisively included. But to me this demon began to appear from childhood, as a voice which, when heard within me, always prevents me from what I wanted to do, but never exhorts me what to do. It is this demon that always opposes me meddling in politics, and it seems to me that it is right to do so. For, know it well, O Athenian men, if I long ago attempted to interfere in political affairs, long ago there would no longer be in life, and not even to you would it seem at all beneficial to myself. And please do not be angry against me, for I speak the truth, for no man will ever be able to go unpunished, who boldly opposes either your own democracy or any other state, and prevents various offences and illegalities from being committed in the city, but he who wants to fight for justice, and very little time if he is to live without suffering any evil. He must by necessity live as a private individual, and never interfere in politics. For this reason I will not bring you great proof, not in words but in things which you prefer very much. So you have heard so many things that have happened to me, to know that not a single man can I yield, and at least against the righteous, out of fear of death, and that if I did not give way, I would immediately perish. I will tell you unpleasant and disturbing things, as a man forced to support my apology, but very true. I, O Athenian men, have never undertaken any other authority in the city, but I have once become a parliamentarian. And it so happened that the tribe of Antiochus, to which I belong, was in charge when you, the 10 generals, who did not collect the bodies of those killed in the famous naval battle, insisted all at the same time with one vote to judge against the law, since later on you all confessed that you had acted unlawfully. Then on that occasion alone, I of the rectors dared to oppose that wish of the municipality, and said that you should not break the law. And I voted against it, and while the orators were about to denounce me to the judicial authority as guilty, and summarily to deliver me to the 11 for punishment, and all of you urged them to do so by threatening and aiding me, I preferred to risk my life by law and by law than to agree with you, who did not decide justly, without fear of imprisonment and death. And this was done when the city was still democratically governed. And after an oligarchy had been established, then the 30 again by force, having summoned me with 5 others to the dome, commanded me to arrest and bring from Salamis Leo of Salamis, that he might be condemned to death, and they have commanded many things, as is well known, and to many others they have communicated, wanting as many of the citizens as possible to make them accomplices in their injustices, but I again, not by words but by deeds, made them understand that for my death. If it were not too proud to say so, it does not concern me at all, but not to do anything unjust or ungodly. For this, of course, I am very much concerned in every way. So that principle of the 30, which inspired so much terror in all, did not at all frighten me, though it was so powerful as to defile me with such an unholy injustice. But after we had come out of the dome, the other 4 went to Salamis, and Syllables led Leo before the 30, and I went straight to my house. And there is no doubt that for my disobedience I would be punished with death if that principle were not quickly dissolved. And there are many witnesses from our fellow citizens who can testify to the truth of my words. Do you think then that I would reach such an age if I were to be unconcerned in politics and uphold what is just, acting for that purpose as it should be in a man who is righteous and honest, and if, as befits it, for that alone I was caring? Nobody, O Athenian men. Neither I, of course, nor any other person wanted me to live for many years, but I, throughout my life and in public, if I have ever interfered in any business of politics, so will I also seem, even in my own private life, that to no one have I ever yielded against the righteousness, nor to anyone else, nor to any of those whom the slanderers call me my disciples. But I never taught anyone, but if anyone desires to hear my speeches or to see me in this work, whether young or old, I have never forbade this pleasure out of envy. But when I receive money I do not speak, and when I do not receive I remain silent, but also to the rich and the poor I gladly allow them to question me, and to every man who prefers better to answer my questions, and to listen to what he wished. And whether one becomes righteous or not, I would justly not be the cause, for I have never promised anyone any lesson, nor taught. And if anyone boasts that he has ever learned anything from me, or heard anything from me in particular, that not everyone else heard, or did not learn at the same time, rest assured that he is not telling the truth. But why do some people at last enjoy listening to me and conversing with me for so long? You have heard, O Athenian men, the whole truth I told you. They do so because they are particularly happy to hear, because those who claim to be wise, but are not proved to be impaired. This is, of course, a very pleasant and joyful thing. To this end, as I have just said, this was commanded to me by this god of Delphi to do it, both by oracles of divination and by sleep, and by any other means, by which every other divine will at last may be shown to men to do anything. These, O Athenian men, are both true and easily provable. For if I corrupt some of the young, but others I have so far corrupted, it is evident, as I believe, that those of them who are now well advanced in age should know that I ever gave them pernicious counsel when they were young, that they should come here to court and accuse me, so that I may be punished. And if they did not want to do so, then it would be the duty of their relatives, fathers and brothers and other relatives, if any harm has been done to their relatives by me, to remember it and come and ask for my punishment for corrupting their sons, nephews, and brothers. I really do not see that many of them are present here, whom I can see very well. First, this Critan here, my fellow citizen who is the father of this here of Critobulus. Then Lysanias of Spetius, who is the father of this Eschinus. Even Antiphon of Cephissus is here, who is the father of Epigenus. And still others, those whose brothers had relations with me, as Nicostratus the son of Theozotides and brother of Theodotus, and Theodotus has died, so that he at least has no need of his brother's help. I see even this Paralon here, the son of Demodocus, whose brother was Theages, and this here Adiamantus, the son of Ariston, whose brother is this here Plato, and Diantodorus, whose brother is this Apollodorus. And many others I may name you, one of whom the Meletos had to present himself as a witness to his accusation, even when he spoke, and if then he forgot to do this, let him propose Torah. It is still time, and I yield that he may speak in my stead at the hour which I have by law at my disposal. Let the Meletos therefore come and say what he can against me, but not at all shall the opposite of it happen, O men. You will see that all those present here are willing to defend me where I corrupted, me where I completely destroyed their relatives, as Meletus and Anytus tell lies. For those same ones who have been corrupted by me might have occasion to defend themselves, but those who have not been corrupted, their relatives, now aged people, what other reason do they have and defend me? But the right and just, that is, that they know that the Meletos is lying, I do not speak the truth. Let it be anyway, O men. What I could say in my defence is almost these, and others, perhaps even the like, which I keep silent. But perhaps none of you will remember that he had ever been in this position in which I find myself today, and he wanted to be indignant against me, for he then, though he was even being tried in a less dangerous trial than the present one, yet he then pleaded and begged the judges with many tears, and even to arouse the sympathy of the judges as much as possible for himself. He brought and presented his children here to the court, and he said, and many more of his relatives and friends came, and I, as it was fitting for me to expect it, will do none of this, especially since I seem to be in the ultimate danger of my life. So after contemplating any of you judges, he might become more angry against me, and upon his indignation because of these memories he would angrily cast his vote. But if any of you, though I cannot believe it, have such an opinion, I think to him I can say rightly, O good man, I may not be alone in the world, but I also have some relatives, because it is precisely according to the Homeric verse, I was born neither of stone nor of oak, but of men, so that I also have relatives and sons. O Athenian men, 3, of whom one, the eldest, is now a minor, and the other 2 children. But none of them I will bring here, to beseech you to acquit me out of mercy. Why exactly will I do none of this? Not out of my imagined stubbornness, O Athenian men, nor out of contempt for you, but whether I look to death with a courageous soul or not, that is another matter. What is certain, however, is that as to my own honour and yours and that of the whole city, it does not seem to me that it is either beautiful or honest to do any of these things, especially since I have been so old and bear this glorious reputation of the wise, whether true or false. But whatever he is, of course, Socrates is generally believed to have some superiority over most other people. If, therefore, those who among you seem to excel either in wisdom, in valour, or in any other virtue were such, that would be a very shameful thing to say. But I have often seen many such people who imagine themselves to be great men, but do disgusting servile things when they happen to be tried, as if they were convinced that they would find no very terrible evil if they were condemned to death, because they have the idea that they would become immortal if you would acquit them. These men, if they are such, I tell you that they are disgraceful to the city, so that even from foreigners one would think that those who excel among the Athenians in virtue, whom they prefer to themselves, both in the first and other offices, are not at all different from a woman. These, O Athenian men, neither we must do, we who seem to have the slightest virtue, nor should you allow them if we wish to do them, but you must make known this very thing. That much more you will give a vote of condemnation against him who in court resorts to such tragic scenes, to stir your mercy and pity and make your city laugh, rather than against him who quietly waits to hear your decision. Besides, which concerns your reputation and honour, it seems to me that it is not just for the accused to plead with the judges and by his pleas to be acquitted, but should only develop his case and try to convince the judges that he is innocent. For the judge does not sit on his cathedra for this purpose, that is, to render justice by grace, but to find it with great care, And he did not swear that he would not give himself good to those who wished, but that he would issue his judgment according to the laws. So neither we should accustom you to swear, nor should we get used to it, for we and you too would then be guilty before the gods as ungodly. Do not expect, therefore, O Athenian men, that I should use such means towards you, which I believe are neither honest, nor just, nor pious, and in other circumstances in general, but above all Torah, but Zeus, when I am denounced as impious by this Miletus. For on the assumption that I would bend you, and by my entreaties I would compel you, having taken an oath, to break it and render me righteous by grace. It is now clear that I wanted to teach you not to believe that there are gods, and while I want to apologize for the accusations against me, I certainly would then accuse myself of not believing in gods. But the thing has not been at all so. For I believe, O men of Athens, that there are gods, as far as none of my accusers, and in our judgment I am left, and in the god of Delphi I wish you to decide about me, as it would be better for me and for you. Socrates' apology concludes. The judges then retired to deliberate, to decide whether Socrates was guilty of the charge against him or not. And they ruled by a vote of 281 that Socrates was guilty. After this, knowing the judgment, another discussion followed to determine the penalty to be imposed on the guilty, for Socrates takes the floor again. XXV. And many other reasons have contributed, O men of Athens, not to be angry at this incident, that you have condemned me as guilty. And the most important thing is that for me this decision of yours was not unexpected. In fact, I am all the more surprised by the general outcome of the vote. For I, for one, did not hope that the difference between the votes of conviction and acquittal would be so small, but that we would be convicted by a much larger majority. Torah, it seems, if only 30 votes were cast instead, she would be acquitted. What is certain, however, is that I was saved by Meliton, in my opinion, and Torah after your decision. And not only was I saved, but it is also clear, of course, that if Anytus and Lycon did not come to court as his lawyers to accuse me, not only would I be declared innocent, but Miletus would even pay a fine of 1,000 drachmas for not having gathered in favour of the accusation more than half of the judges' votes. So the good man proposes against me the death penalty. So be it. But I, Torah, O men of Athens, what penalty for myself to propose to you? Is it not obvious that I will prescribe that penalty of which I am worthy? So what penalty am I worth? To what corporal penalty, or to what fine do I deem worthy of condemnation, because from my perverse opinion I have not rested at all my life? But after neglecting all those things for which most people so hastily care, the acquisition of wealth, the administration of my household affairs, strategic positions and offices, the political tribune and other beginnings, and since I did not take part in any partisan attitude and conspiracy which are so common in this city, because I knew myself to be a much more honest person, or so that I wanted to save my life by engaging in these works unworthy of me, I was not involved in them at all, in which, if I were to be informed, I would be of no use either to you or to myself. And I was concerned with them only, to render in particular to each of you the greatest beneficence, as I have just said, in an attempt to persuade each of you not to care even for your own affairs, before he has previously cared for himself how to become most righteous and wise, nor for the affairs of the city before caring for this city, and for the rest also to take care in the same way. What then am I worthy to suffer, since I am such? Very great good, O Athenian men, if surely according to my merit the truth should be set my reward, and even a good thing, which is suitable for me. What then is good for a man in his 50s, but your benefactor, who needs great rest in order to be constantly engaged in giving you counsel? No other reward, O Athenian men, is more befitting than that this man should always be nourished in the Prytanean, much fairer, of course, than that of you who won in the Olympic Games in a horse race of 1 or 2 horses, or in a chariot race of 3 or 4 horses. For he by his victory helps you to be blissful only in appearance, while I make you truly so, and he has no need of your help in feeding him. I do not have a great need. If, therefore, I must justly determine the remuneration of which I am worthy, I propose this reward to feed at public expense to the Prytaneon. Perhaps then, even at this moment in which I say these things, I seem to speak to you as if to humbly beseech you to receive pity for me, thus showing me great impertinence. But this, O Athenian men, has not been so, but I have spoken in this way probably for the following reason. I am convinced that, as far as it depends on my will, I have knowingly never tried any man, but in this I cannot convince you today, because for a short time we talked to each other. In my idea, however, if you had a law that crimes relating to death should not be tried within a single day, but that they should continue to be tried for more consecutive days, as this is the case in other cities, then I would be able to convince you. But now it is not an easy thing in so short a time to absolve myself of so much and slander. So while I am convinced that I have never tried any other man, I will certainly never do myself any wrong, and I will not make an accusation against myself, saying that I am worthy to suffer a penalty and propose such a penalty for myself. Why? From what fear? Really shall I suffer this penalty which the Meletos proposes for me, by which I said that I do not truly know whether it is good or bad? Shall I therefore choose any of these evils, which I know for sure are evil, and propose this as my penalty? Which one? Should I propose shackles as my penalty? And what need to live constantly in the prison, and to be enslaved to the power of the 11? But should I propose the penalty for myself, and be locked up in the prison until I wanted to pay the fine? But this is for me the same as I have said, namely, to live constantly imprisoned. In the prison because I have no money with which to pay the fine. But anyway, should I propose for myself as a penalty of exile? Perhaps you wanted me to deserve this sentence, and you wanted me to be sentenced to exile. But I would be a very animal lover, O Athenian men, if I am so thoughtless that I could not think that you, who are my fellow citizens, could not endure my speeches and sayings, but considered them much more annoying and hateful, or to suffer them, and therefore you now wish to get rid of them. Others, of course, will easily endure them. This is not at all possible, O Athenian men. Well, life would be nice for me, after I have gone into exile, a man so old now, to live wandering from city to city and being persecuted as a rogue or convict. For it is certain that wherever I go, young people will always hear my words, as it was and was done, and if I persecute them from my neighbour, they themselves will persecute me, persuading their parents to do so, and if I do not shun them, then both their parents and relatives will drive me out of the city for their own sake as a corrupter. But perhaps, of course, he wanted to say them. O Socrates, when for our sake thou wouldst leave our city, would it not be possible to live in silence and quiet? In convincing many of you, I see that it is very difficult of all, for even if I say that to be silent means that I am disobedient to the god of Delphi, and for this reason I cannot be quiet. You will not believe me taking this as irony, and if I tell you again that this is not only a duty, but also happens to be the greatest good for a man, to speak all the days of his life about virtue and about the other matters beneficial to life of which you have heard me speak, and to examine myself and other men, and that a thoughtless and independent life is not a life worthy of man. If he were to say this, even less would you believe me. But these things are, as I say them, O men, but to make you believe them it is not easy. To this end I am not in the habit of considering myself worthy of any punishment. But, of course, if I had money, I would offer myself the penalty of money, and as much as I was able to pay, because that will do me no harm. But now I cannot propose this penalty because I have nothing, unless perhaps you want to set a penalty for me as much fines as I can pay. Maybe I couldn't pay you a fine, so I condemn myself to such fines. But Plato, who is present here, O Athenian men, and Crito and Critobulus and Apollodorus, exhort me to propose a fine of up to 30 pennies, and become my guarantors themselves. I therefore condemn myself to so many fines, they will not be to you as guarantors of this money. After Socrates, convinced of the law, condemned himself to fines, the judges withdrew to deliberation, after which they pronounced their judgment and sentenced Socrates to death. Then Socrates spoke again for the last time, "And that thou mayest gain, O men of Athens, certainly a little time which I still have left to live, for I am old and shall be destitute, very bad reputation thou shalt acquire, and be accused by those who are disposed to reproach the city, because thou hast condemned Socrates to death, this wise man, because they shall undoubtedly say that I am wise, although I am not, those who want to grow your disgraces. So if you had waited a little longer, death would come to me alone, of course, and you would have enjoyed what you have so longed for. For you see, of course, that my age is now far from life, but close to death. This is not what I say, not to all of you, but only to those who condemned me to death. And to them I even say the following. You may think, O men, that I have been condemned for lack of such words, by which I will persuade you, if they think that I should use all the means and all the arguments to say as much as I can, in order to avoid condemnation. That is not true at all. I have been truly condemned, but not for lack of words or arguments, but for lack of insolence and shamelessness and desire to say to you such things which will cause you the greatest pleasure to hear, to mourn and lament with you, and many other such things to do and say inappropriately to me, as I consider them, which you are not used to always hearing from the other defendants. But neither then before the judgment did I feel that I should do anything cowardly because of the danger of doing so, nor do I repent after my conviction, because in this way I made my apology. But much more do I prefer to die with the apology which I have made than to live in the other way, that of supplications and tears. Neither in court, of course, nor in war, nor I, nor any other honest man, should ask to invent a machine how to avoid death, every means to which he is treated. For in battles it is often evident that death, of course, much easier might have been avoided by throwing up arms and asking for mercy from enemies. And there are also many other means separately in each danger to avoid death if one does so shamelessly as to do and say everything. But I fear, O men, that it is not difficult to escape death, but that it may be much more difficult to avoid shame. For it runs much faster than death. And so I, because I am old and slow, have been arrested by the slowest thing of me, and my accusers, because they are indeed robust and swift, have been arrested by the quickest, by dishonesty. And Torah, I will be condemned by you to death, and my accusers condemned by the power of truth to dishonor and injustice. I, of course, am prepared to suffer the penalty imposed by them. So perhaps that is how it should have been done, and I think it was done well and as it should have been. Having said this, I now wish, as you who have condemned me, to foretell for you what will happen to you, and for other reasons which I omit to see, but also because I am now in this solemn hour, when men in particular acquire the ability to foretell the future when their death is approaching. I therefore announce to you, O men of you, where you have slain me, that a great punishment will come upon you immediately after my death, which will be much harsher, but Zeus, or as far as the death to which you have condemned me. For you did so thinking that you wanted to be relieved of giving an account of your life's actions. And yet this will be much against you, as I foretell you. There will be many more after me, those who will control you, whom I have prevented by my presence, and you did not see them, and the more annoying they will be, the more they are younger. And you will be much more indignant then. For if you meditate that by condemning men to death, you will prevent others from reproaching you, because you do not live rightly, you are not thinking rightly. For this method of freedom from control is not very feasible, because others will arise after them again, nor is it honourable, because shame arises on the slain. But that way of getting rid of it is excellent and easy, that no one should prevent others from controlling him, but that he should be ready, having prepared himself in what way to appear as beneficial as possible. Now that I have foretold these things through you who have condemned me to death, I can now leave you. And with you who cast a vote of acquittal on me, I gladly wish to speak in support of this, which has happened to me while the rulers, the 11, are busy with the preliminaries of my abduction. And I have not yet been dragged into prison, where, after being kidnapped, I must suffer the death penalty. But please, O men, stay a few more hours, for there is no obstacle to talking to each other while we still have time. For I want to make it clear to you, as to my friends, what significance is at last what has happened to me. To me, O male judges, and I am not mistaken, I think, if I call judges only you, who gave me a vote of acquittal, something very amazing has happened. The divination voice of my most intimate demon throughout the past year of my life was very often always opposed, even in the most trivial circumstances, whenever I tried to attempt a work that would be wrong for me. But now things have happened to me, which you yourself see, which in fact, and in his individual opinion, each one would regard as great evils, and in general by most people are considered to be the most grave of all evils. And yet to me neither when I went out of my house this morning did the sign of God go against me, nor when I came here before the court, nor when I began my apology, in any part of my speech, whenever I was about to say what, he objected. And yet in other speeches he often interrupted me in the middle of the speech and prevented me from saying what I had thought of saying. Today in my trial the demon nowhere opposed or deterred me at all stages of it, to what it knew I could act or say. What, then, do I think is the cause of this silence of the demon? I will explain them to you. What has happened to me today seems to be a very good thing. And undoubtedly those of us who think that death is a bad thing do not think rightly. And this is an important proof of this for me, that in all cases my most intimate demon would oppose me according to his habit if I were not to do a good thing. Let us also think in this way, for we shall see, as I believe, that it is a great hope that this will be a good thing. The death of one of the two is, or of course, it is such that it is zero, and the deceased has no sense of anything, or as they say, it happens to be some transmutation and transfer of the soul from this world to another place. And if, of course, there is no sense in the deceased, but death is such, which is peaceful sleep, when no one sleeping nor dreaming sees anyone, then death would be a wonderful gain. For I think that if anyone ought to have chosen such a night in which he should sleep so deeply that he could not have a dream, and after comparing all the other nights and all the other days of his life with this night, if he should think then and say which day and night he lived in his life happier and sweeter than this night, I think that not only a private and ordinary man, but also this great king of Persia, will find very few of these days and nights compared with the rest of the days of his life. So, if that is what death is, then I rightly consider it a gain, for the whole time of man's life does not really seem to be longer than one night. And if, again, death is like a migration from this place to no other, then what is said is true, that all the dead are there, then what other good can anyone imagine to be greater than this, O male judge? For if anyone, after coming to Hades, escape from those who falsely claim to be judges, find there the true judges, who, just as they say, administer justice there, Minos and Rhadamanthus and Aeacus and Triptolemus and others of the demigods who have been righteous in their lives, would this emigration be bad? Or, to associate there with Orpheus and Musion and Hesiodon and Homer, how much did any of you want to pay? For I, of course, do not once, but often wish to die, if these things are true, since it was eminently pleasant for me to fellowship there, for it would be possible to converse with Palamedes and Ajax Telamonian, and all the other heroes of antiquity, who were unjustly condemned to death, and I would find no little pleasure, as I meditate, to contrast my own sufferings with theirs. And finally, which is most dear to me of all, I would spend my days incessantly examining and investigating those who are there, as they did and did, which of them is truly wise, and who believes that he is wise, but indeed is not. How much did anyone not want to pay, O male judges, to examine him who led against Troy the numerous army, or Odysseus, or Sisyphon, or so many other innumerable, as one could call Torah and man and woman? And with them to converse and associate and examine them, it would be for me an infinitely great bliss. In any case, the judges there, in my opinion, certainly do not sentence anyone to death on that ground. For, apart from the fact that, in all other respects they are more blissful than those here, they are also immortal, if what is said is true. But you too must, O male judges, have good hope for death, as I am hopeful, and think that this alone is eminently true, that for a virtuous man there is no evil, neither while he lives nor after he dies. Nor are all that concerning him neglected by the gods. And my own incidents did not happen by chance, but it is obvious to me that to die any longer, in order to be relieved of cares and care, would be better for me than to live. That is why nowhere today has the divine voice deterred me while I was making my apology. And against those who condemned me, and against my accusers, I am more or less indignant. And yet they did not condemn and accuse me with this intention, in order to cause me good, but with the thought that they were harming me. And for this evil intention alone, it is worthy to reproach them. But though they have no good disposition for me, I ask of them only one small favour. I beseech you, O men, my sons, when they reach adolescence, to punish them by causing them that same sorrow with which I grieve you, exhorting them to virtue, testing their wisdom and reproving their foolishness. If they seem to you to prefer riches or anything like virtue, and if they believe that they are great, when they are by no means negligible, reproach them, as I reproach you, because they do not care for those things for which they should, and they think that they are something great, when they are not at all unworthy. And if you do these things, then I will be pleased with your righteousness, and I myself and my children. But so long ago we withdrew from here, me to die, but you to live. But which of us goes to a better place is invisible to all but God. This concludes the Apology by Plato. Thanks for listening. Hope to see you again.